if it's a written message. Now, what factors may affect the intended meaning of the message? Why do we sometimes misunderstand the message of a certain person, although he doesn't mean to? Uh, Sometimes he doesn't mean to say that. That's why when misunderstanding happens, the speaker says, "Well, sorry, I didn't mean to say that." So, what factors do you think affect the speaker's or the writer's message? An idea?
Context.
Yeah, the context. The context. Body language. Some people, I mean, use body language while speaking. They use body language, like I'm doing now. I can't. I can't. I can't lecture without body language. Body language includes facial expressions, eye contact, uh, the way we pose, etc. And of course, different cultures may have different body languages. See what I mean? So, for instance, in our culture, what does this body language mean? Yeah.
Like pay attention.
Again, pay attention.
Pay attention.
Pay attention. Who is that?
Daddy.
Dari. Okay. It means, would you use this with human beings in our culture? Yeah, we do use it. Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes, but
We
mostly
use
with
this. We use this in body language, and it's quite acceptable. Yeah. We use it
yeah.
with children sometimes, with adults. Now, in an English-speaking country, this is offending. This body language is offending. If you use it with human beings, they consider it as an insult because they use it only with dogs. See what I mean? They use this only with dogs, not with human beings. So if you are trying to communicate with a British, an American, an Australian, a Canadian, he or she will definitely be upset by using this sign because it's degrading. It's meant for animals, for dogs, not for human beings. This is how misunderstanding arises. Now, what does this
آسفة بس في طلاب بدهم يدخلوا على المحاضرة.
ما عندهم
إذا
شيء يعني ما
ممكن
دخلوا المحاضرة؟
لا إذا ممكن بس تقبلهم.
طيب right.
Sorry.
Okay. Right. Okay. Do you have the ID? Do they have the ID? Right. ندخل مرة ثانية. Yeah, all students are okay. I don't have any waiting.
خلاص دكتور دخل.
Yeah, okay. Right. Right. Okay. Now, in some cultures, for instance, even in some Arab cultures. Uh, what does this mean in our culture? Does it mean negative or positive?
Negative.
Yeah, in Jordan, for instance, this means negative. In Sudanese dialect, it's okay. It means positive. Even within the same culture. I mean, we have different cultures, yeah. Although we do speak the same language, we do have different dialects, and we do have different body language. Now, of course, even at the level of words, a word in Jordanian dialect, for instance, may have a good connotation, a good meaning, but not in Libyan, Algerian, Tunisian dialects within the same culture. In the Arabic dialects, right? I mean, 2,000 years ago or more, so a word would have a good meaning in one dialect, but the exact opposite in another language. This causes misunderstanding sometimes. Same applies to the British and American dialects. Of course, they have differences in pronunciation, differences in vocabulary. So if you are to translate a text, say from American English into Arabic, you have to learn thousands of lexical items, that's to say vocabulary, words that are different from British. So in American, in British, we say flat, to rent a flat. In American, they don't use flat. What do they use? They say apartment.
Yes.
Yeah, they say apartment. Lift, L-I-F-T, in British, which means mas'ad, yes?
Elevator.
Yeah, elevator in American. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In Jordan, for instance, we have Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What's the equivalent in American? Any idea?
The president.
I'll give you a list of the commonly used words in both dialects. Because if you are to work, if you want to strike a conversation or translate a text or interpret an American text, an American piece of discourse, then you have to be familiar with dialectal differences, not just different languages, but differences within the same language, differences within the same culture. Yeah. So what's the American term for Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Any idea? One extra mark. They say Department of State. Completely different. Yeah? Department of State. Department of State is Wizarat al-Kharijiyya. Minister in Jordan, in Jordan we use British, yes? And we say Minister of Interior. Minister of the Interior. Sorry, Minister of Foreign Affairs, yeah? Minister Minister of Foreign Affairs in British is American Secretary of State. Secretary of State does not mean Secretary الدولة. It means وزير الخارجية. So we have to take into account different the differences, lexical differences, the meaning of words, body language, intonation, the way that affects the situation badly. Intonation. If you don't come to grips with the right intonation in conversation, then you are most likely to be misunderstood by native speakers. So, pragmatics then, one is concerned with the study of meaning as communicated by a speaker or writer and interpreted or understood by a listener or reader. So it deals with the study of speaker meaning. 2, pragmatics is the study of contextual meaning. The context affects meaning. We can't understand a message out of context. We need to have the context where the message is conveyed. So what people say in a particular context and how the context affects what is said. Now suppose that right now we are having a dialogue, a discussion, or whatever, and I say it's spitting. It's spitting today. Yeah, and I say it's spitting. Now, what does that mean? It's spitting.
Like it's cancelled?
Sorry?
It's cancelled?
Yeah, spitting. Yeah, spit. It's spitting. Right now, it's spitting.
Spitting بالتي.
Again?
Spitting بحرف التي.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I mean, spitting as, يعني, if it's raining.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Who's that?
Natalie.
Natalie, very good. Yeah, that's very good. It's spitting. Now, when it's not raining heavily, yeah, we say it's spitting. Now, we need to use the right context. Without context, we can hardly understand the message right. Now, as I said, there is also context, say in the glorious Quran, for instance. There is no way one can understand the meaning of a certain ayah without the context. You know what that means? Context. And that, you know what context mean when we say Quranic context?
The ayah.
I mean, a certain ayah was revealed at a certain time. We call it أسباب النزول, yeah? أو أسباب النزول. أسباب النزول is the context in which the ayah is used. So, for instance, when we come across an ayah like ولا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى, yeah? Does that mean that nowadays we can pray if we are not drunk? If we are drunk?
No, we can't.
In other words, can we can we have alcoholic drinks and then go for prayer?
No.
No. It was just before.
Now why? Yeah, okay, fine, good. Why? Because this ayah was abrogated. It was abrogated by another ayah where alcoholic drinks were categorically forbidden. So we need to understand the context in which each ayah is revealed. That's the context. What people say in a particular context, and how the context affects what is said. Suppose that you are having a conversation with a native speaker of English, and he asks you the way. Yeah, he asks you the way. Yeah, and you don't know. So what would you say? You don't know how to get there. So somebody asks you, how do I get to, say, Russell Square or Trafalgar Square? Suppose that you didn't know how to get there. What would you say? What would be the response?
I would just say I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
Or I don't know. Perhaps. I don't know.
Yes.
I have no idea. Now
Yes.
in British English, they would say, I'm afraid I can't help you, or I'm afraid I don't know. So we have to use the right expression in the right context. So we have, I mean, in order to use language pragmatically, the proper use of language. In order to use language pragmatically, we need to immerse in the culture of that language. We need to understand the culture. We need to understand certain concepts. I mean, certain concepts exist in one language, but not necessarily in another. You see what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
language reflects culture. Language reflects culture. Now, not all cultures are the same. Some cultures may have certain expressions, may have certain words, may have certain connotations which don't exist in the speakers or the or writers' own culture or language. Right. Number 3, pragmatics studies how more gets communicated than is said. How more gets communicated than is said. Now, when somebody says business is business, is he trying to repeat himself or herself? Business is business. War is war. What is that? What is the speaker trying to say? What message? What is the intended meaning of the speaker?
To be sure about it.
Maybe he wants to emphasize on something.
Emphasize something. Business is business. I mean, what is, now suppose that I'm using this. Business is business, or war is war. What do you get from that?
It means there is no mercy in it, and business is business. It means like there is no friendship in business.
There is no
friendship.
Business is business. It's like you say, work is work. Work
Yes.
is work. War is war. War is war. It means it costs money, it costs lives, it causes damage, it causes grievances, etc. So the expression is used. War is war. Business is business. The speaker is not trying to repeat. I mean, when he says business is business, he's not simply trying to repeat the same word without an intended meaning. So it's not like you say وفسر الماء بعد الجهد بالماء. Yeah? He's not trying to say something that is redundant. So we have to get more meaning than is said. Right. Pragmatics is the study of the expression of relative distance. So through language, we have different levels. We have different levels of using language. Different levels according to the situation, according to the context, according to the rank, according to age. All these should be taken into account or consideration as we communicate. So we shouldn't use the same level. One can't use an informal level where a formal level is required. So we have to know how, when, and where to use a certain expression, a certain structure, a certain word. We have standard language. We have dialects. We have slangs. So we have to master these. It shows the relative distance. If two friends are talking to each other, then of course they would use a less formal. So, for instance, just to give you an example, suppose that somebody is making noise, and you want to ask him to stop that noise. So perhaps you can say, could you keep quiet, please? Could you keep quiet? Can you keep quiet? Be quiet. Be quiet. And of course, the lesser degree of formality would be shut up. Or in British English, they use a slang, zip it off. You know what that means? Zip it off. Z-I-P, off. Zip it off. That's the least formal. Zip it off.
بنفس المعنى زي اخرس أو سكر تمك.
Yeah, shut up. Yeah, shut up. Zip it off, they say. So we have different levels. We have to learn these as in order to communicate well, and in order not to sound offending. Now, even at the level of using pronouns, we're going to have reference and inference. I think I've sent you the material, yeah? Reference and inference. Chapter 2 will be Dykes. So even at the level of using pronouns, in the British or American culture, sometimes they would use she and he with animals. He with dogs. He's my dog. Now, is this acceptable in our culture? Would you accept that? Would you call a dog he, a he?
No.
A cat,
Yes,
a
yes.
she?
Yes,
Yeah,
we do that.
Yeah, is it acceptable?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Right. Now, what pronoun would you use to refer to child? Child, the word child.
He,
or
So he or
Would you
she.
use he, she,
he.
he,
He
or
or she
she
depends on the gender.
on the gender?
Or both.
it.
Again,
It.
yeah, is that Basma?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good, Basma. Now, in the English culture and some African cultures, they don't use he or she to refer to a child. Instead, they use it. I saw it. I fed it. Referring to a child.
غير عاقل يعني.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. They use it to refer to a child. Now, as I said last time, with each and every, do we use a singular form of the verb or a plural form? In other words,
Plural. Singular.
in other words, 20 years back, we used to say each person or every person must do his or her best. That was acceptable. First, they used every person must do his best. Women were upset. Women were upset because they considered that as a sort of a kind of discrimination. Yeah, why use he, not she? So that they decided to say every person must do his slant her best. Equality. Yeah. Then a conference was held in Switzerland, I think, just to discuss this issue. This is how language affects our minds, and we are affected by the social factors, the social surroundings, and cultural, of course, context. So they decided to change his and her, his and or her. And nowadays, of course, this has affected the syntax of English, grammar. So nowadays, in both British and American, formal and informal, they say each or every person must do their best, although every
Yes.
and each
There.
are singular. But they use they consider that as neutral. These are feminists, الحركة النسوية. They try to defend, human rights, women's rights. So now, previously they used to say chairman of the department. Nowadays, they say, no, not nowadays. Again, 15 years ago, it was they decided to say chairperson because person is neutral. It could be a man or a woman. And now they dropped man or person. They simply write chair. So when we say chair, chair of the department, chair of the meeting, that means head of the meeting. رئيس القسم or رئيسة القسم. Right. Now, in order to communicate well, we need to have what is called regularity. We need to have regularity. Regularity. Now, what do we mean by regularity?
Like it's common, common, something common.
Yeah, regularity. Now, this is a term in it's okay, on the same page. Yeah, okay. Regularity in pragmatics means, I mean, where does regularity derive from? Where does it derive from? It derives from social groups and experience and or knowledge. In other words, for people to communicate, they have to belong to the same community. They belong to the same group, social group, or community. Social group or community does not mean it's not defined geographically. In other words, we are all members of an English speaking social community. That's why we can communicate, because we know the language and we know the culture. So we need to belong to a certain social group. That's one. Two, we must have the same experience and we must share the knowledge. So for instance, how would, let me just see the attendance before they're gone. 37. Just a minute.
Doctor,
Yes.
I want to ask you for something.
Yeah, okay, just, yeah.
Would you like to record our lectures and put them in the website?
Yeah, sure. I've already sent some. Yeah.